Night on Route 66. It was a dark and windy night. Route 66, known for the terrifying stories that had circulated over the years, seemed more frightening than ever in the night's darkness. A man named Jack, a truck driver, had to transport an important load from Los Angeles to Chicago. He decided to drive overnight to reach his destination sooner. As Jack drove on the deserted, long road, he realized that the truck's headlights barely cut through the thick fog. He felt like something was following him. At first, he tried to ignore these thoughts and focus on the road, but the sense of fear and anxiety grew stronger. Several miles ahead, Jack suddenly noticed an old, rusty car parked by the roadside. He sped up to get past it, but as he drove by, he heard a faint crying sound coming from inside the car. His heart raced and he decided to keep going. A few minutes later, Jack felt that something was getting closer again. He looked in the mirror and saw that the same old car was now behind him. Jack tried to accelerate, but the old car matched his speed. Worried, Jack attempted to get off the road, but the old car followed him. Suddenly, the old car pulled up beside the truck, and Jack got a brief look at the driver. The driver's face was horrifically injured and bloody, as if he had just been in a severe accident. Jack was terrified and tried to call for help, but his phone had no signal. With dread, Jack continued driving while the old car stayed beside him. The faint crying sound grew louder, making it hard for Jack to concentrate. Suddenly, the old car vanished. Jack sighed in relief and tried to calm down, but he was still on edge. Several miles later, Jack reached an old, abandoned gas station. He decided to stop and take a break. As he got out of the truck, he heard the crying sound again, coming from the distance. Jack walked toward the sound and realized it was coming from inside the gas station. With hesitation, Jack entered the gas station. The lights were off, and everything was dark and eerie. Using his flashlight, Jack navigated his way to the back room of the gas station. There, a horrifying scene awaited him. The body of a young man lay on the floor, and an old, rusty car was parked beside him. Jack looked at the corpse in horror and suddenly realized that it was the same driver he had seen in the old car. The crying sound he had heard clearly came from the old car. Jack approached the car and looked inside. At that moment, something attacked him from behind, and Jack fell to the ground. When Jack regained consciousness, he was back in his truck. It all seemed like a nightmare. Jack quickly started the truck and continued driving. But he could never forget what he had seen at the gas station. He knew that Route 66 would always have its terrifying and mysterious stories, and he too had become one of its victims. The foggy road. It was a dark night, and a thick fog covered the road. A driver was traveling down a rural, seldom used road, carrying a heavy load that needed to be delivered. The road was unusually quiet, with only the sound of the truck's engine and the cold wind blowing through the trees breaking the silence. As the driver carefully watched the road, he suddenly saw a faint light in the distance. As he got closer, he realized it was a small, old house by the roadside with a dim light on the porch. Something inside him compelled him to stop the truck and approach the house. With fear and hesitation, the driver got out of the truck and walked toward the house. When he reached the door, he found it half open. With a racing heart and trembling hands, he slowly opened the door and stepped inside. The house was dark and quiet, but a strange smell lingered in the air. He turned on his flashlight and looked around. The house seemed abandoned, but traces of past life were visible. As he moved from room to room, a faint moaning sound came from upstairs. With fear and apprehension, he climbed the stairs and reached the door of the room from which the sound was coming. He gently opened the door and was shocked to see a young woman sitting on the floor, seemingly in deep pain. As soon as she saw the driver, she looked at him with eyes full of fear and barely managed to say, "Run, before it's too late." Suddenly, heavy footsteps sounded behind him. The driver quickly turned around and faced a terrifying creature. A large, dark shadow with glowing red eyes. The creature lunged at him, and the driver began running with all his might. He leaped down the stairs and dashed toward the door. At that moment, the door slammed shut with a loud bang, trapping him in complete darkness. With great effort, he managed to open the door and ran toward his truck. With shaking hands, he started the truck and sped away. His heart was pounding, and he couldn't get the image of the young woman and the terrifying creature out of his mind. After several miles of non-stop driving, he finally reached a gas station. He breathed a sigh of relief and decided to take a break. But as he got out of the truck, he noticed the strange smell again. He looked around in horror and saw that the same old, abandoned house had reappeared by the roadside. The driver realized that he could never escape this nightmare, and the foggy road had trapped him.